Anyone have that? So getting started the very top, getting all the way through, and then get started the next thing? Okay, well, this is probably part of why my inspiration was going. Jim's going to be gone for a month to the Congo. I'm thinking, while you're gone, just in case anyone needed to know this, we have Youth Day comes up. Church needs to get that done. Great. I'll need to get that done. You know, I'm going to different things and like, okay, I can't recreate every single event. I'm going to have to use something I've done in the past, and I'm like, okay, what outdoor life skill am I going to teach these kids at Youth Day? I'm like, they're going up on next year. They said there could be up to 200 kids. So I'm like, okay, that was something that I can teach these kids. And I look at thinking, well, in between while I'm thinking of things for the ladies' conference, because I guess I was having a hard time staying focused on one particular point in my life was that. And I was thinking, you know, I haven't done stop anymore. I haven't anybody stop. I haven't done it from the biblical perspective or the cultural perspective. I haven't done stop. So you are really going to be lucky if you get both at the same time. And you get it. So, you know, when you were teaching kids outdoor skills, we, you know, camping, hiking, just being outdoors. Now, where I grew up in Wisconsin, it was nicely laid out in grids. You want to long enough, you can hit all of them. Okay? That's just how it is. You move to Wyoming, you can wander alone before you get your next grid. And then you have to sit there and figure out, is this a lake they still use? Is this not something that's still being used? So, you know, one of the things you teach kids is you teach them to stop. If you do not know where you're going and you're lost, you need to stop. S stands for you need to sit down, stay put, quit moving. Okay? That's what we teach them. We say the first most important step is just stay put. Nobody can find you to keep making a circle. We experience this all the time in the house. One of us will go one time, somebody comes to the other one. Between the base, we can do this. Jim and I can do it from all sides. Well, I'll do it hard to catch up because I think he was going off with the chickens. He'll go down to the basement of your house. You know, we can make these complete circles. But if you stop, stand still, eventually somebody will find you. The next one would be the T. It's like think. It starts to start thinking about the most important questions. Like, how did I get here? Is there something I recognize? How much time before I get started? What do I need to do? You know, that would be our T. Always observe and find those landmarks. So should you be able to, you know, communicate, you'll be able to like say, listen for sounds like, do you hear traffic? Do you hear running water? Do you hear gunshots up in the air? You know, what these things can help you be safe. If you're close to them, someone is going to find you. Also, start looking around for firewood. Now, I always think, look around for firewood, but we never ever gave our kids matches. You're not burning. Fire, they will find you fairly quickly. But anyway, and the next one is to plan. Make your plan for at least the next couple hours. Decide a safe place that I could stop right here. You know, am I in a safe place to wait for help? You know, or do I need to do just enough to be in a safe place? Start slowing down just a little bit. You know, start with 10, 12 minutes. So you make it get attention. You know, so that's what we teach kids. We teach them to stop. But you know, there's times in our lives when things don't go how we expected them. And even if everything goes exactly according to plan, if you do, you really need to teach me how that works. Because you know what? My plans never seem to go exactly how I thought they would. You know, we find ourselves lost, we find ourselves derailed, we find ourselves out of place, we find ourselves hung up in the emotions, and we need to get prepared. We need to get ourselves back where we need to be. We need to stop. So here's my 4 things for stop that I think we need to do in our personal lives when we are studying Hebrew. The number one thing I think we need to do for stop is we need to stop and talk with the Lord. We need to have some one-on-one time with Him. So 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 1 to 16, and I'm going to read them all. It's the story of Hannah. It said she did not feel like she had anything worth continuing on for. She had no kids. She was getting teased continuously. She wanted a baby so bad. She didn't have one. Did not understand at home what she felt and was going through. He was actually just mad at her for feeling that way. And then, she had this other wife that was in his life. And I told my husband I'm so glad I did not have that time period, where if you didn't like the first one, you just bring another one in, you did stay on both of them. And I'm so glad that was not from them. Nobody else could hear her. Nobody else could understand. She pleaded to God. Now, I can slightly relate, and I'll say slightly relate to Hannah's story. So, Jim and I had been married. We had just sold the cow. Jim was going to go attend Maranatha. We had been married almost 3 years at this point. And he said we need to go see the doctor and see what's going on. And the doctor said, well, I just would not tell on kids. And it wasn't a complete shock. I had a couple aunts on my dad's side whose children just were not a possibility for. And I knew that Jim's sister had just what they did have one, but they were having difficulties and it was a long road. And so, we knew all that, but that hope was still there. That hope was really there. And we have to the college territory. We're a little further, I get that. But if you go to college territory and you go to the young married couple, they push you. Everybody's having a baby. And you're happy, you are so excited for them, but at the same time, it's like a big stab in the gut every time you go. And it's really hard. It's so hard to be happy and excited, nobody was rubbing it in my face like me. Nobody was. And I was starting to kind of say, thinking about it, did I do this? You've been married for a while now. Yes, thank you. But and I have no doubt that Hannah was a praying woman to this point. I have no doubt that she had talked with God before. And I believe that Hannah just got to the point where she just had to stop talking to God and she just had to preach. We all get caught up in those details. And so often we forget that the first thing we need to do is hit the ground and be praying because that is what we need first. We need God's kingdom to comfort. About 13 years ago, we were living out here, and I got a call from my sister, and she says, the ambulance got away, mom's opinion, don't come. That's what she tells me, nothing more. No more discussion about that. Don't come. And I remember, like it still happened yesterday, getting off the phone and Jim walking through, and I was bawling. There was no stopping. The tears were going to come. I was hyperventilating to some extent. There's nothing I could do. So at that moment, the only thing I could do was stop and cry, being, begging Lord, please save my mom. And at that point, we those points are like, we just have to stop. We just have to stop wherever we are, and we have to pray. So the next thing we have to do is trust. We need to trust God to help us through the hard times in our lives. In the book of James, which is one of my favorite books, the kids say I quote too many verses, but James is one of my favorite books, and in chapter 1, verses 2 through 4, it says, my brethren, come to the joy that you call into purpose, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives in all the liberally without reproach, and it will be given to him. We are never. And as much as we all hate this, trials are good for us. I'm not saying I would say, oh, you haven't had a trial lately, that's why you're not doing it. I would never tell anybody that. But you know what? Trials do come. They can be big, they can be small, but they do help us grow. And God is our you're never alone. God has pulled us through before. God also sends his people to help us through different hard times. If we go back to 2 Kings, like we were last day with Elijah, who I'm happening to be studying, Second Kings tells us of a widow, the Shunammite widow, who her husband has just died. She's got bills that are piling up. She has to be paid, otherwise they can take her kids. I mean, if any of you ever thought, can you imagine how desperate she must have felt right at that point? Can you imagine someone coming to take your kids? And knowing that at that time period, they would be late, you would never see them again. They would be gone. I cannot imagine having that thought even running through my mind. So she goes and she starts talking to Elijah, and he's like, I don't know what to do. I'm lost. I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. Can you please help me? And then he goes and tells her, go borrow empty jars. And I just find that a little funny. I'm like, you're in debt, trouble's about to come, and the prophet says, go find some jars. Sounds a little interesting, right? Wouldn't you think it would have been just as easy for him to say, okay, and then money just start falling from the sky? But I think it was that faith part that was coming. And he tells you, don't borrow just a few, go get as many as you can. So we know that from the Bible, she has a little oil in a jug. And he tells her to go in her house, close the doors, and start pouring. Now, that's another part to me that was taking immense faith. When you know that quarter-inch in the bottom of one barrel, and you start pouring, how many people that would be your first start pouring? I mean, we know that God was in it and he was telling her through Elijah what to do, but that's a lot of faith on her part because she doesn't have the Bible to do it. All she knows is he said, go get jars and start pouring. And I can imagine they start the first one fills. And they're like, okay, that's good. Okay. This might work. The second one, a little more excitement starts. I mean, it's about around 10 and 12. They are like super excited. Like, this is amazing, and they are so into it. They're super excited at that point. And then she feels all this, she comes back to find out what to do again. And I know something was coming too. And Jim's like, well, you have to make sure. But, run back. He's like, okay, you're both started. And then you have to be okay. You'll have the money to pay your debts, and you get to keep your kids. She trusted Elijah that he was guiding her with what God wanted to do, even when she probably was like, I have no idea what's going on. So going back to my mom, I have 14 hours from my mother if we drive straight and you only go to the bathroom and you fill up the gas. That is the time frame. I have 14 hours. Flying can take anywhere from 4 hours to 29. I mean, hard to say if I'm going to get there sooner or later. And I truly, at that moment in my life, when my sister called me, I'm like, I'm never going to see my mother again. She's gone. I mean, the ambulance is there. I'm just sitting there. I mean, and even though I knew I would never see my mom alive again, I still had the heart that I knew I would see my mom again. And that was hope, because I knew my mom was going to go to heaven, and I knew that I was going to go someday too. And I had trust that this is God's will, even though I did not look forward to what I anticipated the ending to be. We need to trust. We have to trust God to direct us through our trials, through the hard times. So the third thing we would need to do is observe. Now this is a broad area. We don't know what's going on. We don't even know how we got into the fire sometimes. And it might have been a position we put ourselves in. It might have been a trial that just comes into our life. I did not put myself in a position to be crying over him. That was not something I decided. But when you are in the position, by your own choices, are you lying to yourself? Are you lying to others? Are you blaming everyone else for your problem? Or is it something you've already been trying to fix? Are we not accepting God's answer that He gave us? So are we mad at God? Are we blaming Him for our problems? I tuned into Second Samuel when you think about this. David, verse chapter 12, verses 16 through 19 says, "And the Lord struck the child that Uriah's wife bore to David, and it became ill. David therefore pleaded with God for the child, and David fasted and went in and lay all night on the ground. So the elders of his house arose and went with him to raise him up from the ground. But he would not, nor did he eat food with them. And then on the seventh day it came to pass that the child died. And the servants of David were afraid to tell him that the child was dead. For they said, Indeed, while the child was alive, we spoke to him and he would not hear our voice. How can we tell him that the child is dead? He may do some harm. And when David saw his servants were whispering, David perceived that the child was dead. Therefore David said to his servants, Is the child dead? And they said, He is dead. We see in this case, this baby is sick. David had killed Uriah. The baby that came to Bathsheba, this baby was the baby that was coming because it was the adultery with her before all the killing and murder happened. We see in this that God is taking this child away from David due to David's sin. Not the baby's sin, because the baby hasn't had a chance to do that yet. David's sin. Trials coming our lives don't mean that we're not saved just because the trial comes into our life. Many times we know the answer, but doing them is super, super hard. Not everyone will understand who this came to be. In 2 Kings again, we go a little further and we read about the woman who made a special room for Elisha, rested on his journey, and the Shunammite woman, and she, makes a special spot for him to husband to rest, and God is so pleased, and so God, can you just let her have a son? I think she wants a son. And God says, yes, she can. And she has her son, and they're happy, and things are going on, and one day the son says, I'm first, and the queen's master is running around, and then a little later he goes to that. My head's still hurting. And Dad, in the middle of a big project, he sends the son back to mom, and all mom can do basically is hold it. Medicine was not really a thing yet at that point in time. Maybe you can bring a fever down, maybe a little bit of some of the other things, but basically if you're done, you just hold him. That's all you can do. And she holds him all the way to the point where he is dying. He's dying. And I've held my kids sick, but I've never held any of them to that point of dying. And that's a grief I just can't even fully imagine that she's going. And the only thing she can think of is, I've got to go get a budget. I gotta go get a budget. It'll be better. I just gotta go get a budget. She didn't even run to her husband what happened. She just went and got Elijah. She didn't know the reason for the trial. She didn't know what the plan was, but she knew that she needed to get God's help. And in her mind, that was a lot. After I cried for a long time about my mom and ambulance, my friends started to think, you gotta get through the emotional part, and you bring them to think, and I started getting ready. I was gonna go. I didn't care if my sister said don't come. That was valid. That was the stupidest thing she could have ever told me. I was gonna go. So I start thinking, and I'm starting to write down the suitcases. I was folding clothes. I was flying. There was the cool ones, the dirty ones. I didn't care. I'd watch them when we got there. It really did not matter. My mom was 59. At this point, they're the oldest. I'm starting to think, like, okay, who had a family conditions? What heart conditions? Was it somebody young? You know, going like that. And we get another phone call, and it was a different sister. And she says, Dad says you'll be thrown out in 20 minutes, and he means it. Do not come. Going, okay, never mind. Yeah, Dad, I knew what I was going to do regardless. That was very funny. He's like, do not. That was like the hardest. He said, wait and see how things are going to go. That was like the hardest thing I think my dad has ever told me to do. And my dad has told me a lot of very, very hard things in my life. But that was like the hardest thing I can ever remember him saying is do not come. stay where you are. And we need to observe. We need to stop. We need to think. We need to observe how God is directing our path. And the fourth thing we need to do to get on back on track is we need to plan. How are we going to not put ourselves through that trial again and again and again and again? Now, like I said before, there are some things we don't choose for ourselves, but you know what? There are a lot of things we do choose for ourselves. I've thought often, what about the person who has made the choice to smoke every day of their life? And now they have cancer. And I'm very sorry they do. But at some point, you also have to recognize it is the choice that they've made by smoking again and again and again. And that's not always how that goes in that situation, but sometimes it is. Or, what about the person who is drunk every single night and gets in their house again? Again, it's still things that they put in their life again and again and again and again. But you can say, well, okay, so what about that person who belittles everyone they come to? And then can't understand why nobody wants to talk to them. That can be a trial. Or what about that person who's decided that the church was wrong and they're never going to set foot in there again? What have they lost? They've lost that friendship, they've lost that family, they've lost that support group. These are all still trials that God puts in our lives. When we make the decisions, a lot of times He lets us. We all know that not every hard place can be avoided. I mean, there are still things in life that are going to come that we can't avoid. However, through every hard place or every trial, that gives us a place we get a chance to grow. But that being said, I still don't believe anyone needs to continually put yourself purposely in a place where you're going to go through. God will give you enough, just what you need. You don't have to help it. He'll come up with the trials you need, probably better than you ever could. And I was thinking about that. I was thinking, King David. He had his two sons, and we read about David's two sons who were half brothers in 2 Samuel again. It's actually a long passage of Scripture, chapters 13 through 19. And we read about Tamar, and we know the one brother wanted his half sister, and he got mad, and he was completely inappropriate. He hurt her. Her full brother found out, and we are told that their father was mad, but he didn't really say anything. He just was mad. Now, I was thinking about that. My dad would not have been like that. I can tell you right now, he'd have been mad, and we'd all heard it. There would have been no holding back. He would have made sure each one of us knew what the consequences were, and it would probably vary by the person who did the action of the consequences. But the rest of us would still get to know about it. We're told that Absalom let this fester for 2 years before he decided to deal with Amnon. They were out cheering feet at the end of a big party. I can see that. I mean, think about a branding. You spend all day out there and then you go out to party when you're done, right? That's what you do. You eat food, have fun. And got drunk. He died. And then Absalom, instead of telling his father, you didn't take care of this, so I did, which, while it was not right, he goes a little farther and he starts running away. But you didn't want to get in any kind of David went into an immense phase of deep grief at that point. But I think he was also relieved because he didn't know what to do about the situation, so he had done nothing, but now it's been out. David in time let Absalom come home, but the only punishment was his father would not see or talk to him. That was his punishment. In the time to Absalom, that punishment grew way too hard. He could not bear it. So he started plotting against his father. He got together that large army. He was going to take his father's place as king. And then David, instead of dealing with this as the king, he turned around and he ran and let his son take control for a while. After running for a while, the people get with David and they decide to fight and they decide to win. And Absalom gets caught in a tree by his hair. Now, I had to laugh at this one because my dad approves everything. But amongst the things he he is a logger. They've done this for my entire life. We were discussing this because my brother named his business because there was Tiffany Family Farm, Tiffany Family Logging, Tiffany Family Sons and Logging. So we're getting down there, we're running out of our ways to keep that Tiffany and the logging all in the same line. And I think Daniel was Tiffany Lumber Management, I think is what he ended up with this one. But getting caught by your opinion. Has anyone else ever had that experience? Okay, even with that ridiculous part on your head, with the muffs that come down, the face scarf that goes over, you still gotta put your ponytail somewhere. I'm cutting it all off just to go help Dad for a couple of days. That's ridiculous. Inevitably, it doesn't matter. You can get your hair up under that thing, it comes tumbling down. And you'll be doing something, and that branch just one branch. And that's just a little piece of hair. I can't even imagine how stuck he must have been in a tree on his hair. Can you even think about that? I mean, even just brushing your hair can be painful. If you don't believe me, ask Secret. She will let you know. When Mom brushes her hair, it can be very painful. But I can just imagine. Okay, number one, and then you're hanging there. Anyone else ever visualize this picture? You got pulled off your donkey and you're hanging by your hair. That would be painful. And some people with David, they decide, what, David's not going to deal with this. I enough of this. And then it's done. Over. Finished. David goes into this deep, horrible grief again. But David, to some extent, had put himself in that position to be hurt by not dealing with situation one. It made all these other situations that now he's hurt. David did not make a good point. He did not stop sin right there. From coming over and over and over again. And then we talk about Jesus. Jesus was tempted to do things too. That he knew were wrong. He was taken into the wilderness. If we go to Matthew chapter 4, it says, starting at verse 1. Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. And when he fasted 40 days and 40 nights, afterward he was hungry. Now when the tempter came to him and said, If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become bread. But he answered and said, It is written, Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. Then the devil took him up into the holy city, and set him on the pinnacle of the temple, and said to him, If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, He shall give his angels charge over you, and in their hands they shall bear you up, lest you dash your foot against a stone. And Jesus said to him, It is written again, You shall not tempt the Lord your God. Yet again, the devil took him upon an exceedingly high mountain, and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. And he said to him, All these things I will give you, if you will fall down and worship me. And then Jesus said to him, Away with you, Satan, for it is written, You shall worship the Lord your God, and him only you shall serve. Then the devil left him, and behold, the angels came and ministered to him. Jesus was tempted too. He got to do things. I mean, when you stop and think about it, he is hungry. He's probably tired. Because I don't know about you, when I'm hungry, I don't get tired. It's just kind of like, he's hungry, he's tired. He could do all those things Satan promised him, but he chose not to. All he had to do was just worship Satan. I mean, it was just simple. But, this is the difference. He had his answer already prepared. He already knew. I mean, he has that advantage, of course. He knew what was coming. He knew what was going to happen. He knew what was coming. And he was prepared. So now that my dad had called and said, just wait, do not come. Right after that, I'm like, okay, I'll make a better plan. We're panic plan, we're a next plan. So I decided I just was going to bring the school books. We didn't know how long we were going to be there, so I was half out school books. I had those all. I had the clothes packed. I decided to take a nap while I had the clothes in the washer. Decided that Dad had called yet, so I would go this morning and to the time, half an hour, a full time, and continuously from no words of come. Then finally the next call came and it was my mom. And I'm crying and she's like, it's okay. Everything's okay. I'm okay. It's okay. It's okay. Well, it's still took me a little while to hear her saying that. She had been to the doctor that day and seen a new nurse practitioner and she needed to get her diabetes medication refilled. That's all she went for was refill. And this new nurse practitioner thought that my heart rates were up considerably too high and she wanted heart tests done. And they couldn't be done right there at the clinic. They would have to go to the hospital that was about 20 miles away. But because mom was already checked in at the clinic, she could not just ride her dad. She had to go by ambulance. Now, they could have saved me a whole lot of money if anyone had told me a little more of this information sooner. But, my mom, she went to the hospital. She had all kinds of tests done. She did get some medications for her heart. I've never seen I laughed, we laughed, but it was really sweet. My dad would not be pregnant like the next 4 days. I mean, he was like her side. Because one of the tests, they said, well, we put a plug in your vein, and if the plug falls out, you've got about 20 minutes. He's like, if you're done, it's going to be right there. And he would not be anywhere. He was like, can you walk to the bathroom without him outside the door? But, truth of the matter is, I really don't know if I'm trying harder in the first phone call or when I got I really do not honestly know. And, there are times I talk to my mom, fairly frequently. We don't talk every day, but a lot of times. We talk about things like that, And, the other thing I realized is I learned, and it wasn't the way I wanted to learn that lesson necessarily. But that lesson was that every time I saw them, you can never come to see them again, which sounds morbid, but it's true. When I leave Wisconsin and I leave all family, I can't count that they will be there the next time. And life is hard. There will be dark, hard places in our life we each are going to have to face. And truth is, while we all may go through some similar trials, we are not all going to go through the same trials the same way. We can help each other out and the best we can, but we're not going to go through it that way. We do know that if we've asked Jesus to be a personal savior and accepted what he did for us personally on the cross for our personal sins and paid the price for us personally, he's with us through every part of the cross we go through. We have the Holy Spirit with us. We have a comforter. We have a guider. We have a father we can talk to anytime in prayer. We have church family that God has provided to help us through the various situations. But I just wanted to throw this out for you, something to think about. You got your wildlife piece and your other piece, but just stop. S. Stop where you are. You need to before that situation gets any harder. T. You need to trust. We need to trust that God is in control, even if that is the hardest thing we have to do, giving someone else control. We need to observe. Take a few seconds, see how God is correcting, observe. Maybe there were signs that we missed and now we found. We need to stop and observe. P, we need to plan. We need to plan on following the path that God has laid for us. Now, he doesn't say that we get to see 10 miles down the road and know what's coming. We just need to see a little bit. Around the next corner, maybe. We don't know. One time, Jim took us all for a hike. He likes to hike quite into it. We'll just say that. He took us on a hike and he kept saying, we'll just go around the next corner. We'll just go around the next corner. But truth is, all God is asking us to do is just get to that next corner. Get to that next corner. Get to the next corner. So I just wanted to remind you all to just stop for just a few minutes. And if you ever find yourself wandering imagine a few mothers will. Probably kids might at some point. Stop. So I want to take a minute and I want to make sure to tell you all thank you for coming, taking some time out of your weekend, out of your day, out of your month to come spend with us, to enjoy your time with us, the fellowship with us. I told Jim, I said, I'm not sure they actually hear what I'm talking about because they're so busy laughing and giggling the rest of the time. And he's like, but they need that. Everybody needs a chance to laugh and giggle and have a little bit of fun while you're there as well. And I have been reminded multiple times that I'm not going to alcohol